Have you ever gotten home from a long day of work and asked yourself, isn't there something better than this? The issue is probably capitalism. And while capitalism does work for some people, it doesn't work for the majority of everybody else. I've done a lot of research and read a lot of books over the past couple years to come to my own conclusion about this system. So, today I will be explaining what capitalism is, why it doesn't work for the working class, and why communism is a better solution. So what is capitalism? Capitalism is basically an economic system where a few private entities at the top own the means of production. What is the means of production? The facilities and the industries that basically keep society going. Few people at the top, super rich, pretty much own everything. So private ownership, that's like the main tenet of capitalism, but within that there's certain other things like competition, self-interest, decentralized pricing, which is like supply and demand, and typically limited government. So in the United States, for example, we don't have pure capitalism, but we have a mixed economy because we have certain socialistic things and entities like Social Security and Medicaid. And while those are good things, definitely good things to have in our society, they still operate under a capitalist system. So they're kind of meant to help people, but still the end goal really is profit. It's not the betterment of people or the betterment of society. It is to make those few rich people rich. So we know that capitalism helps the rich and doesn't really help us. What does it do to us? Well, if it makes them richer, it makes us poorer. So in 1965, the average CEO made 21 times the average employee salary. In 2023, that number is now 290 times the average employee. So that's wages. So where the CEO used to make 21 times your salary, now they make 290 times. Look at the housing market. In 1990, the housing price to income ratio was 3.1, and in 2023 it was 4.9. So now it costs 4.9 times the average salary to buy the average house. So these are bad things. Can we make laws that prevent this from happening or make it not go as bad as it's going? Not really, because what do we know about rich people? They have access to the best lawyers in the world. And what do the best lawyers in the world have? Knowledge of how the laws work and knowledge of loopholes. So we all know rich people use tax loopholes. There's some obvious ones where when they put money into certain assets, like Roth IRAs and other things, there's less tax that they have to pay. The top 1% don't pay their fair share of taxes, and they don't have to because they get around it through these loopholes. So if reforming capitalism, making laws to try to mitigate the effects of capitalism, if that doesn't work, then what does work? What is the long-term solution? The long-term solution, which I know scares people, is communism. So what is communism then? Communism is an economic system where instead of a few private people at the top owning everything, we as a society, the workers, the working class, we collectively own everything. So that is collective ownership. That is the main tenet. What are some of the other tenets? The other main important one is the eradication of private property, which is a big thing that does scare people because it sounds scary. What does that mean? If you own a house, if you own a toothbrush, and you don't use those things to generate profit, that's personal property. Personal property is allowed under communism. But if you're a landlord and you're making money off of that house, or you're renting out that toothbrush for other people to use, which is gross, but that's private property, and that wouldn't be allowed. Those things would have to be collectively owned by the society. And the last thing that scares people when they hear communism is the idea of dictatorship. And while this isn't an unfounded concept, it's a misunderstood concept. Karl Marx has this idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is a fancy word for working class. After capitalism, and in the transitional period to communism, you have the revolutionary period. And this would require a form of dictatorship, but not like we're used to. This would be the workers seizing the power that the ruling class has and becoming the dictators of the society against them. it would require suppression of the ruling class so they don't try and carry out a counter-revolution. So dictatorship, as we understand it, is not what would happen, but we would be the ones in charge and dictating what goes on in our society. So at this point, we kind of realize that capitalism is very problematic. It creates wealth inequality, and it puts people in so much power that they can get around anything and everything we do to try to mitigate the effects of capitalism. And while I'm not here to dissuade you from voting, voting is fine, but we have to go beyond the voting booth. We have to start mass striking, mass protesting, and hopefully we need to revolutionize. And although it won't be an easy or super pleasant process, in the end, when the working class owns the means of production and we have a say and control over our society and our world, that's when it will be worth it.